part 2 of the Constitution. On the last slide at the end of part 1, I was kind of rushing to get through it, and I didn't quite go through this well enough, and I have a little more time now. So the number of electors per state are determined by the number of representatives. In our case right now in 2020, North Carolina has 13 representatives. So you take the 13 representatives and you add them to your senators, which are 2 senators. Every state has 2 senators. So that gives us 15 electors in North Carolina. Now, most states are winner-take-all states, meaning if you win the state, you get all 15 electors. There are 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, that are split, meaning that if you win part of the state, you'll get part of the delegates or part of the electors. So, moving on. So the issue of slavery, and it says the North is anti-slavery, guys, but they're really not that anti-slavery, and they're just leaning more toward wage labor. And this whole thing, North and South, this whole issue of slavery comes about because of power of Congress, and it comes about with the House of Representatives, to be exact. So the more people you can count, the more representatives you get, the more power you have. So in the North, as you see, it says anti-slavery. Like I said, they're leaning toward wage labor, but they're not as anti-slavery as you think. They don't want to count slaves as part of the population. Why? Because then that gives them less power in the House of Representatives. Remember, the South is very rural. Plantation owners, all that good stuff. There's not as many people in the South, so of course they want to count the slaves as part of the population, so they would obtain more power in the House of Representatives. The North says that's fine. I mean, hey, you need to be taxed on slavery anyway. It's a property. And of course, the Southerners say, no, it's not property. These are people. We shouldn't tax them. So what you get out of this, and keep in mind, the South wants to count slaves as part of the population, but they don't want to enfranchise them or give them any voting rights or anything of that nature. But they don't want to pay a tax on them because they say they're not really property either. The North says, no, we should not count them as part of the population because they're property and you should be taxed on this property. So out of all of that, you get the 3/5 compromise. And the 3/5 compromise means that slaves would count 3/5 of the population. So you count every third, 1, 2, 3 count as the population, 4 and 5 do not count as the population. So Southerners, of course, do get a little more power in Congress here in the early days. And of course, the North gets that tax on slavery. So here is the purposes of your preamble. There are 6 purposes to this thing. So I want you to look at it. It says to form a more perfect union, stronger national government, promote loyalty, unify the people or unite the people, and make the U.S. one country, to establish justice, peaceful way to settle disputes, fair, orderly system, court system, to ensure domestic tranquility, to protect citizens from crime, to maintain law and order, to provide for the common defense. In other words, defending us against foreign enemies, providing and using the military, to promote the general welfare, to provide people with needed services like health care, education, dealing with natural disasters, helping citizens during time of need like the elderly and disabled. Guys, this part of the preamble covers a lot of modern day things. And think about health care, think about where we're at with COVID right now. All of these things. This is the federal government's job to protect its citizens from these things. So also to secure the blessing of liberty, to protect individuals' rights of all, and to protect to end equal protection and treatment. So you have 7 articles to the Constitution, and this is real quick. You guys studied this last year in civics. Article 1 deals with creating Congress or the legislative branch. Article 2 deals with creating the presidency or the executive branch. Article 3 deals with the Supreme Court. and the judiciary branch. Does not set up all the federal courts, though, just the Supreme Court. So Article 4 deals with relations among states. Article 5 deals with how we amend the Constitution. Article 6 is the supremacy clause of the national government, and the supremacy clause says the Constitution is the final law of the land. So if you have a state law that is at odds with the federal law, the state law has to change, because the federal law, it reigns supreme. So anyway, that's the supremacy clause. And of course, Article 7 we hadn't used since 1789, 1791, and that is the ratification process of the Constitution. So you also have a Bill of Rights. This is your first 10 amendments. You guys learned the Anti-Federalist being one of these Anti-Federalist states being North Carolina, pushed to get the first 10 amendments passed to the Constitution. So you get the first 10 amendments passed in 1791. We have amended the Constitution since 1791 a total of 17 times. That gives us 27 amendments total. Go back and look and see how many amendments deal with voting. If you do not think voting matters, go back and look at how many amendments deal with voting. And if voting doesn't matter, we do spend a lot of time with it.